Okay, excellent. Hi, we're live on Business Zone. My name is Rachel. I'm the small business editor of the site. And welcome to our live questions and answers session today on social selling. With us is, I'll introduce everyone now. With us is, I'm going to start from right to left. So Tony from X Factor Comms. Hi, Tony.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you very much. Yeah.
Good, excellent. Thanks for joining us. And next we have Steph, and Steph is from Incredibly, which is based in London. Hi, Steph.
Hi.
Good. Thanks for joining us, Steph. And we have also got with us the UK Managing Director of Xero, Gary Turner. Hey, Gary.
Hi, Rachel.
Hey, excellent. Thanks for coming today. And last we have Annabelle, and she is the founder of Honest Brew, which is also based in London.
Hi.
Hey. So we're all looking forward to the panel here today. Just a few housekeeping things before we start. As a few of you will know, there's a Cover It Live panel, which is a live chat box next to the video. So you can post your questions in there, and we'll have time at the end to ask the panel some of these. We have a set of pre kind of written questions as well that we're going to ask the panel, so we'll do those first. But please make sure and tweet us or add your questions into the Cover It Live box, or even comment below the article if you feel the need. So why we're doing this webinar is, well, it's Great Entrepreneurship Week this week. So in partnership with them and with Xero, we're hosting this live Q&A to bring you some insights into social selling, which is it's a hot topic at the moment. So it'll be available on demand for those who can't stay for the full session, or if you simply want to watch it again, it'll be available on this page and on a separate article on Business Zone or on our YouTube channel. So we'll be talking today about how social selling can help your sales and growth in your small business. Essentially, it's social selling is about developing relationships online via social media networks, and as part of the sales process. But I guess to get a deeper understanding of what it means for each of our panelists, I'll start with Tony. What does social selling mean to you?
In some ways, I always think of social selling as being something of a misnomer. I think it's correct in the sense that social media and social networks are an incredibly effective place for ultimately delivering sales. But sales techniques, everything you've ever learned about sales in terms of closure, in terms of looking for buying signals, in terms of the sort of the slick reputation of a good salesman, a lot of that is absolutely not applicable on social, and in some ways it's the one way to turn people off is to act like a salesperson. So don't think sales. Ultimately, sales might be the goal, but sales is not the frame of mind a lot of time.
Excellent. And Gary, I'd be interested in your thoughts as to what you think social selling is, or kind of what your opinion of it is.
Yeah, I guess like Tony, I don't know if I'm a fan of the term, because I guess it suggests a very discrete channel of purpose for it. But I think if you're in business today, social media is just another channel that you have to talk to your customers on, or future customers, and so it's kind of like an 0800 number would have been 10 or 20 years ago. You have a question, you have a query, maybe something that the website doesn't answer, and I think being present on a social channel, whether that's to sell something right now or whether it's to nurture a relationship, is really important for many businesses today.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that, Gary. And Annabelle, as a small business owner, obviously of Honest Brew, I want to know, what do you think of social selling? What does it mean for you?
Yeah, well, we're an online business, so we're an online craft beer retailer, and so it plays quite a big part in what we do, really, because it's because our customers are buying from us online. A lot of them are interacting with us online as well. So it's basically, for us, it's about what relationship we have with our customers and how that carries across sort of all the platforms that we're on, whether that's, like you say, selling, or whether it's engaging in them or answering questions or queries, or adding value by providing interesting content for them.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. And Steph, last but not least, definitely, what do you think social selling is, or what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a massive fan of the term. I think that it kind of implies that there used to be a type of selling that wasn't social. So I think it's just more that we're taking lots of the practices and skills of selling and applying them to the new tools that we have now that are social media channels. So yeah, I agree with what Tony was saying in particular, actually.
Excellent. Thanks all so much for your opinions on that. And we'll move on to the second question now, which is, it's a big one. So it's kind of like, do you need to be active on all the social platforms, or can you pick and choose which ones? And kind of, if so, if not, if you don't need to be active on all of them, how do you know which ones to go for? So I'll give this one to Gary first.
I think it depends on who your customers are. If you're selling to a very specific niche, if you're selling to consumers, if you're selling to a specific demographic of consumer, then you might find that Facebook is a great channel for that. If you're selling home products or something that's used in a kind of family setting, then you're going to be better off being on Facebook than on LinkedIn. And so I think who you're selling to and the kind of industry you're in will determine that. But I guess everybody kind of needs to have a Twitter account. Twitter's kind of like the dial tone for, like, if you don't have a Twitter account, it's kind of like not having a website in some senses. So I think everybody would probably have at least some presence on Twitter. But thereafter, I think it depends on the kind of business you're in and who your customers are, and you have to reflect that in the social settings. And in some cases, that'll be all channels, and in some, it might just be Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I'll give this one to Steph next. What do what platforms are you active on, and how do you choose which ones that are relevant?
I think relevance is really the key thing here. I think it's about, you need to ask yourself where are the right audiences and do your research rather than kind of spreading yourself too thinly. I think for lots of businesses it's about resource, and rather than kind of jumping in on everything just because kind of it's there, it's more about working out where are the right people, what have I got to say, and what's the kind of right context for it. So I think
Good. And what do you think, Tony, as someone with a large active following on Twitter and things, do you think that's one of the main ones?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of honing in on a small number of channels and doing them well, rather than spreading yourself too thinly. I see so many brands and some quite big and well-known brands leaping in and thinking, right, we've got to be absolutely everywhere. And frankly, there aren't just dozens, there are hundreds, even thousands of social networks, if you include trade forums, etc. as well. You cannot possibly be good on all of them. So I say, certainly starting, which is what we're kind of talking about here, start with 2 or 3, do them well, and then maybe gradually build out from there. But certainly don't try and cover off everything from the start, or you'll set yourself up to fail.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that, Tony. And Annabelle, what do you think? What kind of social channels are you active on, and how did you get started with that?
I'd say we started by identifying where our customers were most likely to be. So for us, that's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are the 3 main platforms that we're using. But I'd say that we use them all in quite different ways. So Twitter, like I think someone already mentioned, is a great way to just engage in conversation. It's very instant, and you get people approaching you quite a personal way. Whereas something like Facebook for us is more about sharing content and adding value. We kind of looked at where our potential customers or our current customers are, and focused our energies on those.
Excellent. Thanks all so much for your feedback on that. That's a great way to get started. And once you've identified the platforms, the next question is, if you've got no previous experience with social selling or with using social media to achieve sales and growth, how do you get started? And I guess I'd direct this one back to Annabelle again. How did you do it at first? How did you get started, and what is your experience?
We basically just got started by giving it a go, because we found the more we started trialing different things, the quicker we kind of learned what people were responding to, what was working both in terms of engagement and sales. Basically just getting in and having a crack. All of the team read a lot and sort of are quite up to date with what's happening in the social media world. Yeah. But for us, it was basically how we tell our story to our customers, almost in the way you would sometimes if you're meeting them face to face. So taking them on a bit of a journey to get to know the brand before sort of hitting them with a sale, I guess.
Fantastic. And what do you think, Gary? What's the most effective way if you've got no previous experience, for example? How do you get started?
Well, there's lots of great examples of organizations doing this well. And so the good news is you can just try and kind of pick up some ideas and learn from people in your industry that are already doing this. I remember when we were just getting going in the UK, I was the UK social media person for Xero, among many other things I did when we were a startup. And it's really hard to find the time to do that and to think about it. And there are lots of channels, and so one of the ways that you can get going is, so I used to use Google Alerts, that anytime anybody was talking about my product or brand anywhere in the UK, whether that was on Twitter or on a social media or general community, then I would get an email alert, and that enabled me to jump in and take 5 minutes out of my day to respond to it. And that then showed you where the hotspots were, which were the forums that you should be spending time on, where are people talking about your industry or your product or service. And just using simple things like Google Alerts is a good way of saving you time having to be on social media all day long.
That's a really good tip. Thanks for that, Gary. And what do you think, Tony? You know, what's the best way? Do you have any tips or advice on how to get started?
I think the first advice I would give to anybody is the old adage about you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. I think that applies very much to social media, particularly when you're getting going. I think at the early stages, listening and just learning and just taking time to step back and see what other people are doing, just as Gary said, absolutely right. Brands you admire, companies in your sector. The beauty about social media is that you can learn absolutely as you go. You know, the techniques, everything is changing all the time. That's the difficult thing. But it's almost like a self-learning exercise. The more you do it, the better you get at it. Start by listening and learning, then gradually become more active. The other thing I'd say is be patient. Don't expect immediate results. Don't expect an immediate sale. Don't expect 100, 1,000 followers overnight. And don't get despondent. Don't lose heart, because it will happen. It provided you give it a go and give it sustained effort and activity, you will find that it pays dividends in the long run. But don't give up at the first sign of, gosh, this isn't giving me any ROI yet, because you'll regret it, and you'll come back to it in 6 months' time and think, I've just wasted 6 months that I could have been building up on this stuff.
That's some really good advice there. Cheers for that, Tony. That's great. And lastly, Steph, have you had experience with this before? You kind of started incredibly, and if not, how have you got started on those channels?
Yeah, I think what Tony said actually about long-term, viewing this as a kind of long-term commitment is really important, especially as we're tending to see people now being a bit more kind of stepping back and asking lots of questions before they actually jump in. So writing strategies and planning, I think planning alongside listening is probably the key here, and also the fact that you are able to see what your competitors are doing. I think taking inspiration and writing lots as well, and getting and kind of putting setting yourself kind of plans along the way. So what do you want to achieve with the first month or two, and kind of viewing it as a long-term thing.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. Thanks all for the advice there. That's brilliant. I'm sure there's some really great tips as to how businesses can get started. But when you've kind of had to play around with it and you've gotten started on the relevant platforms, and for example, if you identify a sales opportunity, how do you then follow that up? I'll ask you first, Tony. What do you think?
First thing is, don't just dive straight in for the kill with the sales alert sort of flashing, thinking, right, now I've got one. I think people on social media are instinctively averse to pushiness, overt salesmanship, over aggression. Not just the person that you are sort of you've got in your sort of rifle sights, as it were, but sort of the rest of your followers will notice as well. So even if you spot what you might think is a buying signal and someone very relevant that you're connecting with, take time, make sure that you build the relationship, take time to comment on, to comment on relevant, for example, on Twitter, on relevant posts that they're making. Maybe drop them their Twitter handle into relevant posts that you're posting, so that you're thinking of them in a particular context. And only when you're absolutely sure that they know who you are and that there is some form of a bond, just the same way that you wouldn't you'd build up a bond with somebody face to face rather than leaping straight in. Only at that point should you think about potentially taking the conversation offline and arranging to have an email or a phone interaction. But be patient, because I know from experience, Twitter lists is a wonderful way of monitoring. Particularly for example, on a private list, monitoring target prospects. So I use it a lot to basically be monitoring sort of people who I've got in my sort of sites as potential clients, and I'll be listening into what they're talking about, their interests. Sometimes over the course of months or even years, waiting for the right opportunity to come along. And I promise you, it will come along. But the last thing you want to do is blow it too early and go in all guns blazing. And once you've done that, then your chance is almost certainly gone.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Tony. That's really, really good advice. Annabelle, as someone who's run a crowdfunding campaign recently as well, which obviously involves a lot of social media, have you identified any sales opportunities, and if so, how did you follow these up? Or not even sales opportunities, I suppose crowdfunding opportunities, and what's the follow-up procedure for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because this question kind of led me to talk about our crowd campaign really, because I guess engaging over social media wasn't necessarily going to lead to a direct investment just like that, but it was around how we tell our story over social media, and basically how we can use that as a way to identify people that do want to know more, and then, like you say, pick up with them, email, phone, face-to-face, and sort of form more of a relationship with them. So for us, it was sort of, I guess, finding expressions of interest. So we basically took them through to a page that would explain a bit more about the business and what we were doing. And then they had like another step in terms of, actually, I'm really interested here. Then we go and pick up with them offline. So in some ways, we gave them kind of the tools to express their interest, but like has already been mentioned, didn't sort of go straight into the sale. It was identifying the right people, identifying their interest, and then bringing it up offline from there.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. Brilliant. It's really good to get your insight there. And what about you, Steph? What do you think? Have you identified any sales opportunities, and how do you follow up with them?
Yeah, I think if you remember why people are using social media, and that they're there to kind of to consume content or to kind of to engage with people, and they're having conversations, then you're more likely to remember that it's about adding more value rather than kind of what you can take from people. And when it comes to kind of building relationships and maintaining them, it's like keep that conversation going and do that by adding more content and more value to them. So like Tony was saying, if you find more content that they find interesting, and offer them another reason to kind of keep engaging with you, which isn't just because I'm trying to sell to you. And that would be my advice.
Cool. Definitely. Thanks very much. And it'd be great to get your advice as well, Gary, as obviously someone who managed the earlier kind of zero social media accounts.
Yeah, I think that so you could follow your competitors. So anybody that's talking about another business in your category or in your industry, maybe you're a new entrant and nobody's heard of you, and perhaps there's a conversation happening in somebody else's stream that is relevant to your product, and that's either competitors or other people around you. I guess you have to be careful about if somebody's talking about a feature or a requirement that your product might satisfy. You don't just want to muscle in there and say, oh, we do this and it's great and it's amazing, and you shouldn't be too pushy or shill. But there are definitely appropriate ways. If somebody's saying, I'm looking for a product that does this, I can't find one, or has anybody used this product before, and they're talking about your product and they perhaps don't know that you're on Twitter or on that channel, then it's perfectly okay for you to politely come in and say, actually, here's the answer, here's the section of our website, this is the price, and just do a bit of a customer service job. And that, although that's not overtly selling, that actually just kind of being a bit of a concierge and helping people along that way of discovery can be a very effective way of building your brand. It enables you to talk about, well, what your values are. You're a pretty cool company, you're approachable, you're attentive, you're there. And if you do a good job of that, then you might then convince the customer to come to your website and engage and buy your product. And so I think just being smart about where you're going fishing, just because you don't have many followers doesn't mean that the conversation isn't happening somewhere else. So make sure you tune into where the conversations are happening.
That's really good advice. Thanks very much for that, Gary. Excellent. And we're going on to another quite topical question now. So obviously small business owners are really time pushed. There's only so much time you can spend doing certain things. So how much time a week should you spend doing this, or is there a specific set amount of time? What do you think, Annabelle? How much time did you spend on social media on your crowdfunding campaign?
Well, I'd probably talk about sort of the general business as well as crowdfunding. I'd say, again, this might be different for businesses that aren't so online focused, but social media has become just sort of an everyday part of what we do. So it's literally from engaging with customers that are telling us what beer they've enjoyed recently, to someone with a delivery question, to sharing something that one of the breweries we stock is up to, it's almost become, it's just such a part of our day now that it's not so much about, it started out as setting aside time for it, and then now sort of rolled into so many of our day-to-day business practices. But again, that might have to do more with us being an online business than anything else. But I'd say across the team, most of us in our own ways dip into social media to engage with our customers, to provide value, it's basically such a good way to understand what your customers are thinking and talking about, where they might have been having a conversation with their friend in a room at their house. They're actually now having that conversation across social media, and you can see it and join into it and respond to it. So I don't know if I can say an exact amount on time, but for us it's making sure we're providing relevant content and making sure we're there to respond to customers who do have questions or queries or want to engage with us, sort of whatever the time of day or night, really.
Excellent. That's great. Thanks very much for that, Annabelle. And Gary, go back to you again as well. So how do you know how much time per week should you?
Yeah,
is there a set amount, or is it just?
I think again it depends what stage you're at. If you're growing, if you're mature, if you've got a team that does it. And even although I don't really, I mean, it's a long time since I've managed our own social media, but I still, I have my own Twitter account, I'm on other channels, and I still habitually check out who's talking about Zero, who's talking about a product, what's happening, and still do that, although it's not my primary focus, and I must do that 5 or 6 times a day, I don't know. It doesn't take very long to do it. I think sometimes people can, you can worry about spending too much time on social media, and if you're asking yourself the question, am I spending too much time on social media, you probably are, because if it's occurring to you that you are, then you probably are. But I think, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a day, if you're office based, it's really easy to do. If you're out and about, you can jump on your phone and it takes you all of like 30 seconds to see what's interesting, any questions, anything we should be attending to, and as I say, I still do that. It must be, there's probably more than 5 or 6 times a day. It's probably once an hour or something like that.
That's fantastic. Cheers for that, Gary. It's great advice there. And Steph, you next. How much time do you spend on social media per week for your business?
Quite a lot. We spend probably all our time on social media because we're working on client accounts. But I think my point on this would be that there's a lot of planning you can do kind of while you're not directly on social media. So you can do lots of scheduling and things, and the kind of the more I also think the more you put in, the more you get out. You can't really do too much listening on social. I think the kind of reactive daily stuff, like Annabelle was saying, becomes a really instinctive part of your day. So I think it's a really tricky one actually to say kind of exactly how much time we should spend. But I think for us, it's about planning and doing the bits that doing lots of scheduling, using tools to make sure that the time you are spending is efficient, and it's more about being reactive and listening. Yeah.
That's excellent. Thanks so much for your insights. And what do you think, Tony? Is there a set amount of time you can spend, or is it depending on what your business is?
I think the point I would really agree with is that the ultimate objective is that it just becomes an absolutely natural part of your day. You know, just like checking emails or checking your phone messages. You get to the point where you do it without thinking. It is part of the fabric of your business. It's not something you say, oh God, I need to do my X half hour or hour on social media now. You wouldn't. You might have that approach to making calls or emails, but more likely than not, it is just one of the parts of the business which is automatically part of your day. If I had to sort of distill it down and say, well, so you're a smallish business starting out on social media, what's too much, what's too little, what's like the average likely to be, I reckon if it amounted over the course of a working day to half an hour a day. I think that would be absolutely, fine. 2.5 hours a week, 10 hours a month. That's not a huge time commitment, but the value you'll get out of that in the long term will be worth its weight in gold. Because the great thing about social media is that if answering an email or taking a phone call, that's a one-off thing. It's a job done. Thanks very much. Move on to the next thing. It's not really an investment, whereas everything you do on social media, every tweet, every LinkedIn post, every new connection you make, that is building up an ongoing, growing asset for the future. And that becomes of serious value to your business over time. And that's what I love about social media, is that it's something which actually is becoming part of your business success and an asset in its own right. Rather than just being something that is an add-on that you feel you have to do because everybody else is doing it.
I completely agree with that.
Excellent. All right, that's brilliant. Thanks for that advice, Tony. That was great. We have 2 pre-written questions still left to go, but if the panelists are happy, we've got some really, really good questions in from the audience, and I'm really keen to answer those in the kind of time that we have. Are you happy to jump onto some audience questions instead of proceeding with the pre-written questions?
Sure.
Thank you.
Excellent. Good. Well, I'll just start with this one from Jeff. So it says, social, is this just about brand awareness? Where can I find examples of businesses actually selling through social? So someone kind of wants real world examples. I'll probably go to you, Tony. What do you think? Where can they find real world examples of people selling?
Looking at the B2B world, the company which is, I feel that has really nailed it on social media, Dell, I see as being a real success story, both in terms of the style of the way they do it, and also the way that they have basically embedded it across their whole business. So it's not just a sort of a marketing or communications thing. It's something where every part of the business, from the technical people through to marketing, sales, operations, everybody is involved. So they, for me, on the B2B side, and I tend to focus on B2B, they're a really good example of a company which knows what it's doing, which realised how essential social media was going to be from a very early point, and is led from the top. They don't just talk a good game. Michael Dell leads by example there. And if I can, and I'm giving a plug to one of my previous employees, I think Richard Branson at Virgin is another great example. So Virgin, again, are another company. I mean, they do tend to get the brand side of things and communications right in lots of ways. But I think on social media, particularly through their, through their leadership from the very top, they're a very good example, and for the consumer world.
That's brilliant. Thanks for that example, Tony. And Annabelle, I'll go to you next. Where do you think people can find real-world examples of businesses selling through social? And is it just about brand awareness?
I'd be tempted, depending what area of business you're in, to follow and like pages of either businesses that you're interested in or businesses in a similar industry to you. Because if they're doing things well, then they'll probably start advertising to you, and you can see what they're doing, what's interesting to you as an individual. I do quite a lot of work with other businesses, and quite frequently am advertised too, and it's quite good for me just to see what are other people doing, what do I respond well to as an individual, so that you're thinking about the content you're posting being read by an individual and not just an advertisement placed up into the middle of nowhere. So I'd start by doing that, and I'd say it's not just about brand awareness. I sort of touched on before, but for us it's literally part of our customer experience, so how people engage with us over the phone, over email, over social media. It's one of the methods now. And yeah, we do use it for selling. So we introduce people to the service and give them an opportunity to buy. So it has been really helpful as a small business to grow using social media.
That's fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. So there's another question. I'll direct this one towards Steph and Gary, if that's okay. So there's a really good one from Tony, which is, how do you bring a conversation on social into the sales funnel and effectively manage the buying process? Steph, can I ask you first? How do you think that might work?
That's an interesting one. Yeah, it's really tricky. I think like with all sales, actually, it's going to be about the individual kind of personal relationship. So it's quite hard to come up with a kind of formula for this kind of thing. But in terms of it's going to be about gauging kind of where they are on the journey, and the way I would look at it is, look at your sales process and what works outside of social media. Social media isn't actually that crazy compared to kind of what you're doing now. If you're selling now, there'll be things you can take from that and apply to social. Yeah, so I'd have a think about kind of the sales journey and how much information people need before they take the kind of next step with you, and how the kind of conversations tend to go on other channels, and then try and apply that to social media.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that, Steph. And what do you think, Gary? How can someone kind of tangibly bring it into their sales process?
So I think I'll preface this by saying, I mean, is it brand, is it selling? Well, actually, brand is selling. So it's not about developing your brand. It's the point of developing a brand if it doesn't turn into customers. So I think it's easy that people kind of get tripped up on show me somebody that's selling versus show me somebody that's developing the brand. Everybody's selling, or unless you're a charity or not for profit. How do you bring that into your sales funnel if you're a sales organization? Pretty simply, actually, you could create a specific landing page on your website that was dedicated to, this week we're going to be talking about this subject or this product or this initiative that we're sponsoring or we're running as a business, and we're going to create a landing page specifically for that. And that's the landing page URL that we're going to be using through social. So we'll have one for Facebook and one for LinkedIn or one for Twitter. And you can then begin to measure the impact and the flow from the channels that you're working on, because you'll see how many people have come to your landing page. You might have a call to action there, which is to take out a trial of your product or to click a button to sign up for more information. And you can then begin to at least map where the interest or not is coming from by channel. And if you're a sophisticated organization and you've perhaps got like some CRM software running in the background, it's relatively simple to tag them up. And so there are some really simple practical ways of doing it. But again, as I said at the beginning, unless you're some kind of government agency or a not-for-profit or a charity, everybody's selling on social media. Otherwise, there's no point being there if you're a business. Developing your brand, servicing your customers, it's all sales. It's not literally having salespeople on the internet. That's not the way that it works.
Brilliant. Yeah, some really good points there. Thanks so much for that, Gary. So there are two of our panel questions, or sorry, two of our covered live questions for the panel. I'm going to do just one more because we've got a couple of minutes left. So it's about Twitter ads, so it's very platform specific. A guy called Matt is asking, have you ever used Twitter ads to drive traffic to your site, and tell us about your experiences? Is anyone in particular want to take this one? Tony or Annabelle? Yeah, Annabelle?
I don't mind starting. We've used Twitter. I guess what's really good about Twitter is you can engage other people in a conversation quite quickly. So it doesn't feel like you're just posting something and talking to no one. You can loop into an existing conversation or people with a large amount of followers, for example. And we found in our early days when, I'm being quite specific, but beer bloggers or press or someone picked up and talked about us, that resulted in traffic for us. So I guess Twitter is really good at basically linking you very close to people that do have an audience, and if you can engage people with a large audience, then their followers, and they start talking about you, then their followers will quite likely be driven to look at what you're doing. So I'd say Twitter is, as a platform, very good at that because you can be talking with other people rather than just necessarily posting to no one.
Excellent, brilliant. Has anyone else got experience with Twitter ads as well, and would they like to share it? Or should we wrap up?
Sorry, Twitter ads, I'm a little bit of a cynic. I'm the world's biggest Twitter fan in terms of the organic side of it and in terms of sort of building relationships and connections through mainstream Twitter. I'm personally not sure that they're on the advertising side of things. The problem is with Twitter is there's so much anonymity that the demographic depth of the analysis you can have in terms of profiling audiences is by definition only going to be as good as the information which people share about themselves, or either through their habits or through their profiles. Whereas something like LinkedIn sponsored updates, again more on the B2B side, I think is incredibly and incredibly effective. So I use LinkedIn sponsored, so effectively paid, getting your organic updates and your company updates, what's happening in the business, particularly your added value content, thought leadership stuff, out to a wider audience beyond your followers and beyond your connections, on an incredibly targeted basis. Sounds like I'm doing an ad for LinkedIn sponsored updates, that's been the biggest sort of light bulb moment for me over the past 12 months is how incredibly effective that can be. And for any business selling to other businesses who hasn't already tried that, I would say that's where I would be putting my first dollar rather than Twitter advertising.
Okay, yeah, some really valid points there. Thanks very much, Tony and Annabelle, for your views on that, definitely. So I think that's just about it for today. It's about 40 minutes now, and we've had some questions from the audience, and we've done our panel questions. So unless there's anything anyone else would like to add, any final thoughts, we'll wrap up. What do you think?
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, good discussion.
All right, it's been a brilliant debate. And remember, if you have missed it or missed a start or want to come back and watch it again, it'll be on demand on the site and on our YouTube channel. So that's YouTube, I think, /BusinessZone. We'll also have an article out later on, maybe next week, with the videos kind of in bite-sized question format, so you can come back and see them as well. If not, we'll say goodbye to anyone else. So bye, Tony. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Steph, for joining us. It was a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary, for coming to join us today.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, Annabelle, as well, for all of your insights and everything. And thank you so much to our panel. Thanks to Xero, and thanks to Great Entrepreneurship Week for this webinar. So, yeah, bye from us.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks.